Thank you so much for joining us on Crypto World. Let's start with the fact that New York proposed a mining ban. They put the kibosh on it last year. Now it's come back. What's happening right now up in New York State?
Yeah, so the mining ban is back. It failed in the last session and it has reemerged. It is moving through the legislative process. So we are starting to sound the alarm bells. This would ban proof of work mining, or put a moratorium on proof of work mining in the state of New York. We do see this as a threat to the industry as a whole. There could also be copycat bills, which I see as a big challenge and a threat to this process. Once New York passed something, there may be other states that want to follow. We are calling on the citizens of New York that care about Bitcoin, that care about the future of this technology, to contact the Assembly and ask them to vote no on the proof of work mining bill. But the idea is that they're concerned about the high energy consumption of Bitcoin mining, of proof of work mining, and they're really pushing clean energy and green energy initiatives in the state. We do believe that proof of work mining has the potential to lead the transition to clean and green energy practices, and this bill could have significant unintended consequences if it moves forward, and we should study this before just trying to stop it of the fear of the unknown.
And I have to say, when you think of New York State Bitcoin mining, one of the first power sources that comes to mind is hydropower and nuclear power. So what's the reasoning here? Or what are the mining operations that they're most worried about?
Well, they're worried about ones that use fossil fuels, obviously. But again, Bitcoin is leading the transition to renewable energy and to clean energy practices. So again, this could have significant unintended consequences if this was to move forward.
Yeah, and when you think of the fossil fuel narrative, I mean, flare gas and being able to capture that and contain methane emissions, channeling that energy towards Bitcoin mining, and then of course when you think of co-locating renewables with the power grid and Bitcoin miners, there's also a lot of potential there. You talked about the fact that there might be copycat bills. Where do you think which states are most at risk of potentially being following and New York's lead on this?
Well, we haven't seen anything so far, so there's no imminent suggestion that we're going to see copycat bills, but New York is a leader in terms of state policy making, and there's many other states who may want to follow New York's lead. On my book, California would be at the top of that list.
Next thing, we're going into midterm elections. We're seeing the emergence of political action committees dedicated to championing candidates who either believe in crypto or Bitcoin specifically, and who also are willing to support people who just don't speak out against cryptocurrencies. And I wonder, what is your thought on the role that these kinds of voters are going to play in elections coming up?
Yeah, I truly believe that Bitcoin and blockchain technology can be a tool to enable greater participation in the electoral process. It's estimated, based on different studies of the users of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, that up to 50% of millennials own a cryptocurrency today, Bitcoin or others. These are the people in our citizenry who are least active in the political process. So I truly believe that campaigns that are able to leverage this technology will be able to reach people that currently aren't reached today. And at the end of the day, our government, especially Congress and other elected officials, are a reflection of the people. And this is clearly the will of the people. Just look at this conference today and the amount of people that came in from all over the world to be here to celebrate the success of Bitcoin. So I do believe we will see more people serving in office that want to see this technology succeed and that will support pro-blockchain technology and pro-Bitcoin policies.
I think back to when the infrastructure bill was being debated back last August. I'm sure that was a rough few weeks for you.
It was a very busy past couple of weeks, yes.
Yes, but for many people, I feel as though they saw these millions of voters come out of the woodworks, so to speak, in support of crypto. It's a voting bloc people didn't even realize existed. And I wonder, first off, how big is that voting contingent and where does it go from here?
There's a number of different studies. It's estimated, up to 42 million Americans today own some form of cryptocurrencies. So again, the government should be a reflection of its people, and that's having a huge impact on the public policy process. We saw that during the infrastructure bill, but that was one of the first. There'll be many other instances where we see a push to ensure that we have legal policies and legal frameworks that promote the development of this technology here in the United States.
So on the topic of the infrastructure bill, we're going into, we're in the thick of tax season. Yes. There are so many narratives out there around crypto tax evasion. The IRS is trying to kind of catch up and retroactively deal with certain regulations around this. Where are we now? Is the narrative out there false about all this tax evasion that's happening? Break it down for us.
So this is not a community of tax evaders. Let's just dispel that myth right here and now. IRS issued guidance in 2014 that said convertible virtual currencies like Bitcoin would be taxed as property, which means they're subjected to capital gains and losses. So since 2014, so 8 years ago, we still have not received any meaningful guidance on how businesses or individuals are to comply with that. So there are a lot of questions from a tax compliance perspective. What do you do if there's a hard fork and you now own a new cryptocurrency that you didn't before? How do you address
what's your cost basis?
Yeah, where does it start? Just basic questions. Are we using LIFO? Are we using FIFO? For information reporting, that's what the infrastructure bill was about. Who's responsible for collecting what information? Who is considered a broker in a digital asset ecosystem? So the industry has a lot of questions. The IRS has been criticized by 3 different accountability offices for not providing sufficient clarity around digital assets. So the idea that people are not abiding by the rules is not true. We do not have, the IRS frankly hasn't done its job, and even the IRS's own Inspector General issued a report in 2018 saying exactly that. And here we are in 2022, and we still don't have that guidance. But the infrastructure bill did instruct IRS to issue guidance, so we are expecting some soon. So I think we will see clarity, and it's really important that the industry is a part of that process to ensure that the details of that guidance is going to be workable for businesses that are building and operating in the space.
So I want to shift focus now to what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. We've seen new applications of cryptocurrencies in ways that people didn't realize it was necessarily being used on the ground, at war. And one topic that's come up is the idea that it could be a tool for sanctions evasion. And that has been debunked, and I wonder, maybe we start on that. Can you use crypto to evade sanctions at the level that we're talking about with respect to governments?
No, and the United States Treasury's Deputy Secretary Nellie Lang issued a statement just a couple of weeks ago saying that we are not seeing that. So the officials that are monitoring this and enforcing sanctions on companies, they're not seeing any widespread cryptocurrencies used for sanctions evasion. Further, if somebody wanted to evade the sanctions policies, they would have to go into these dark net marketplaces to do that. The volume is very small, and it's just simply not possible to do something on a large scale. So we're not seeing any evidence of it. If there, in the instance that there was a will to do that, there's not the volume for it. But illicit uses of cryptocurrencies overall are not common, and they're also decreasing as a proportion of the network. So according to Chain Analysis, which is one of the companies that works with law enforcement to provide them data on chain to follow the flow of funds, they found in 2021 illicit activity represented about 0.05% of the full cryptocurrency transaction volume of that year. Now, if you juxtapose that into the traditional financial system, the UN estimates that money laundering represents anywhere from 2 to 5% of GDP. So cryptocurrency is not the main use case of illicit finance. It's not common, and it's decreasing as law enforcement is getting more up to speed with capabilities to trace on-chain transactions.
When you look at how cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have been used on the ground in Ukraine and Russia over the last month and a half, almost 2 months now, I mean, what stands out to you?
I think it's absolutely amazing what Ukraine has been able to do with the crowdsourcing power of cryptocurrencies. Michael Chobanian is the person from Ukraine who helped set up the official crypto fund for Ukraine. He testified in a Senate Banking Committee just the other week. He said it took him 10 minutes to set up the infrastructure to build this fund. The people from around the world at the time had donated about $50 million in cryptocurrencies to that fund. It's estimated over $100 million in cryptocurrencies have been donated to Ukraine overall. And then Mr. Chobanian further stated that when they received the funds, they were able to receive them and then buy materials and deploy them on a 24-hour turnaround, which is unbelievable to see how Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology are changing the way that governments are able to fund themselves and defend themselves from significant threats like Russia.
Now, going into this, Ukraine was already one of the greatest adopters of cryptocurrency across Europe. So they had that infrastructure in place. But with all that's happened, shortages at the cash shortages at the bank, ATMs limiting withdrawals, have you seen, has there been an emergence of an even stronger peer-to-peer network of cryptocurrency exchanges, either on the ground in Ukraine, on the ground in Russia?
So again, Michael Chobanian, he also testified that they believe that the opposition to Putin is potentially using cryptocurrencies as an alternative financial system, especially given all the threats and risks that they're taking by being a part of the opposition. But Bitcoin has been incredibly resilient. It's still a very young technology. It's about 13 years old today. And to be able to see what happened in Ukraine, how powerful, how much of a tool it's been able to be for Ukraine to defend itself. To see just a couple months before that, what happened in Canada with the truckers, and it to be an alternative lifeline for people who may have been cut off from their financial system. It's really played out on the global stage to be a significant tool whenever there is economic unrest. We are in a period of significant economic concern. I do think we have systemic issues across the global financial system, and it's really important that we have alternatives if something fails, and Bitcoin has really emerged as one of those alternatives.